Anchor charts are a wonderful tool for all students, but especially English learners. It provides a place where all of the language that we've used and that I'm going to need is in one place that I can refer to and go back to. Now, we are going to walk through a way of setting up your anchor charts that is focused on the content, but also very supportive of what students need with language if they're going to fully participate in this math lesson. Now, of course, this strategy of anchor charts set up this way would apply to any content area, and I hope that you would try it in other ways as well, whether it be discussing a text or science or something in social studies. Whenever students have to speak about or write about your content, a language embedded anchor chart is a wonderful tool. So let's get started with our math example. Later in the course, you will see a strategy called Math Paired Conversation Protocol. And that's a discourse strategy that we're going to share with you. And in that video, students are working on a particular money math problem. So I'm going to use that same problem for our anchor chart so you could see how this anchor chart could then support students in that later activity discussion as well. So here is the problem that they are working on. As you see, this is from our math paired conversation protocol. So the problem they'll be working on in that conversation, that discussion, that discourse activity, we are prepping for now. Now, we might use a different problem that is similar to warm up to that activity, or we may be prepping just for this activity. Depends on how you want to work that. So knowing in my mind that we've been doing a lot with money type problems, how much more, how much less kinds of things. I want to prepare them to be able to have a discussion. I really do some joint problem solving, bring in that discourse that we've been talking about. So this problem, Miss Ryder found some change in her pocket. She needs $1.25 to buy a drink, probably Diet Coke. How much more money does she need? So this problem assumes a lot. There's a handful of coins. So we are going to make our anchor chart with some assumptions, right? I'm going to assume, because I've been teaching my students, and of course they learned everything I wanted to teach them, I'm going to assume that they already know the coins and their values. Now, if it seems like they don't when I talk about it, then that can get on the anchor chart as well. But you know your students, you know what they're really strong with, but don't assume too much. Never hurts to add a little bit of support when you're not sure. We just have limited space, so we have to really think through what we want to put on this anchor chart. I highly recommend you plan this conversation out in your mind before you begin. So I know we're heading toward this problem. I may show the students the problem first and let them look at it and think about it. So to solve this problem, we're going to need certain language. Here's how I would present it to my students. To solve this problem, we are going to need certain math knowledge and certain language. There's certain vocabulary related to this problem that'll be very important for us to use, the real math vocabulary. There are also certain kinds of sentences that you'll need to use, whether you're speaking or talking to a partner or writing about this later. We always write about how did you get that answer? How did you solve the problem? So knowing that there's certain language, words, sentences, things that we are going to need to use. So we're going to talk that through now. All right, that would be my introduction for students. Now, before I got in front of students, I know what needs to go on this anchor chart because I know what I want from them later. So what I want you to think about first in planning it is that you think of your model response. In the end, I know that I want students to be able to solve it and then tell me how they solved it. So kind of think through that in your head or write it down. Best if you write it down. What are they going to say? What do you want them to write? And be very specific and have high expectations because they can meet those expectations. So what I do ahead of time, I made myself a sticky note to remind myself of what vocabulary and what kinds of sentence frames and structures I want to make sure I include. Because if I'm in the spur of the moment, I might forget. And I want to plan these out. This is also a chance for you to think about differentiation. Some students may just show you in math because they are beginning English speakers and they're not putting those sentences together quite yet. Some may give you very simple sentences, first, next, then, last. If your students are more proficient, you want to raise the bar and you want to model something that uses higher language. Same math, but higher language. So my example, I'm going to go for that intermediate level, like low intermediate, where students are just kind of getting started and writing about sequencing and writing about problem solving. That's my target. Make sure you have a target. Make sure your sentence frames, your vocabulary match that target, right? This is where we can push students up while working in math and add a higher level of language. Okay. Those are your planning tips. So as I would do this, I'm looking at this and say, okay, I know when I talk about this problem with my partner, there are some words in here that jumped out at me, and ask them, what are some key words in here? I see change. I mean, change can mean a few different things, right? You can change your clothes. You can change the tires on your car, right? That means put something different. What does the change in this problem mean? What are they talking about? She found some change, right? You could change the world, make things different. That's not what Miss Ryder found in her pocket. That would be kind of cool though, but that's not what she found in her pocket. What did she find? And so you can talk about another word for coins or money is change. So we have to remember that change is the same as the coins we learn. Now, if we are still struggling with the naming of the coins and the value of the coins, then I could go further here. And I might have pictures prepared ahead of time if my students need those stronger visuals because they're just getting started in this. I'm assuming right now we've been doing this for a while, and so they just need a little reminder. So change or coins, remember coins are a quarter. How much is a quarter again? Right, 25 cents. Or it might be, what's another coin that's out there? A dime. Okay, a dime would be, what's another coin? Let them answer nickel. That's 5 cents. What's another one that you see in Miss Ryder's hand? That's a penny. I am purposefully writing these as the decimals because that's what we're going to need. So like 1 cent, 5 cents, that I could put it here, that's similar. Right? We know those coins, we know what they mean, but we need to use them in their decimal form for this problem because we're going to be doing some math. And the written this way is a lot harder to work with for coins. These are decimals, and this is how we're going to do the math. So we are going to put it that way on our chart. So let's write decimal here too. Right, decimal is a number that has, right, it has the point in there. And a decimal tells you how many, here it will tell you how many out of 100 or a dollar, right? Tens, hundreds, right? We're not really focused too much on place value today, but I want you to know when you're talking about this, you might need to talk about the decimal and where you put it and why you put it there. So remember that word. The decimal is the point right here. That's the decimal. Well, that's the decimal point, and it shows you that there's a decimal. All right, what else do you see in this problem? I'm thinking we're talking about money. So if we're using coins and change, another word we're going to need, right? We might be talking about cents, right? Dollars and cents. And so I'll use the example in the problem, $1.25. We're talking about dollars and cents. So here's the dollar. Here's the cents. Okay? So when we're reading this, we need to say dollars and cents. So that leads me to a question that I have. How do you read this? What does this say? I'm going to put it down a little bit. Right? Is it 125? 125? How do you read this with the dollar sign? And of course, I'm always taking student input, and I'm going to put on here, you are going to say blank dollar, or might be dollars, and blank cents. So Mrs. Ryder has $1. We don't need the plural. $1.25. Maybe she needs $5.50. Maybe she needs 10 cents. Right? You can use this frame to help you talk about the dollar amounts or the money amounts that you are using in your math. All right, let's think. Do we need any more vocabulary? Okay, when you're talking about writing money, you might want to say something like, I put the dollar sign in front of the total, right? You put the dollar sign in front. So let's put dollar sign here. Just so you remember that it's not a squiggly thing. It's not an S with a line. That's called dollar sign. So we might be using that. What kind of math do you think we're using? Are we going to be talking about multiplication, addition, subtraction? What do you, we're not solving it quite yet, but what might it be? What might you do? All right, so maybe you're going to add. Maybe you're going to subtract. So you might add, you might subtract, right? I can tell you this problem. I mean, you could use a little multiplication. Maybe I'm going to put multiply here too. Well, we're going to use this to help us talk about our problem or what we're doing to solve that problem. So I'm not really going to say, let's just say I have a handful of coins, right? Miss Ryder has these coins. Miss Ryder add the quarter, dime, and pennies. Miss Ryder subtract the money. Miss Ryder multiply the money, right? That's not really working. So when we're talking about what we did a few minutes ago or yesterday or whenever, we're talking about something in the past, Miss Ryder added her coins together, or Miss Ryder subtracted the coins. This one's a little tricky, right? Multiply becomes, right? Miss Ryder multiplied the coins, whatever it might be, right? We'll find out when you start solving. But remember, when you talk about it, it's in the past. So added, subtracted, multiplied. If you say, I am going to add, or I am adding, right? So really think about your verbs and make sure you're getting them straight while you're talking about it. Oh, let's see. How many more? It says how much more. So when we talk about more, is it getting higher or is it getting lower? Right? She needs more money. Does she need additional things in her hands or get rid of some? Right? So more, right? She needs to add some. Her money needs to go up, right? We know she needs more money. So we're going to remember that. All right, I think that's pretty good for us. Lots of words. If we come up with different ones, we can add them later. So we already talked about $1.25. Your answer may be something like Miss Ryder needs $6.42. Whatever your answer is, you can find your sentence there. Now we're going to talk about what do I want to hear when you're talking about this problem or writing about this problem. Right? You're going to take a sequence of steps, right? You're going to do a lot of different things. This is a little bit of a complicated problem. There's a couple different steps. Sometimes you write those steps like 1, do this, 2, do this, 3, do this. I don't want to do it that way today. I want it to be more like a paragraph or a conversation, right? Not direct, not like a recipe. You could do it that way, but let's make it a conversation or a paragraph today. So when I'm starting out, you can give some kind of introduction. So give me some ideas. All right, how much more money does she need? So you can say, I found that Mrs. Ryder needed blank money to buy her drink. All right, this is how you could start what you share with your partner, what you share with me, what you talk about in your group. You have to introduce what happened. What did you do? I found that Mrs. Ryder needed how much money to buy her drink. Right? You're giving the final answer here. What are a couple other things you could say for found? Right? Maybe you want to say, I discovered. Right? That's kind of an exciting word. I discovered that Mrs. Ryder, right? You solved that mystery. What is the word for math? When you're doing in math, I calculated. You could say calculated. I calculated that Mrs. Ryder needed blank dollars and cents to buy her drink. Right? Sounds pretty sophisticated. So there's your response. Now you need to support that response with some additional information. And this is what we call sequencing. I'm going to put this up here because it's not a word. Well, you might use it when you're talking. Sequence or sequencing. And when you talk about sequence or sequencing, that's what you're saying. This is what happened. First it happened, second it happened, third it happened. 1, 2, 3. This is the order that we do things. And so we are going to be sequencing, and there are certain kinds of words and terms you use when you're sequencing. So if you're saying step 1, step 2, step 3, there are some other ways you can say that. I'm going to give you a couple examples, but there are lots of ways. And you can look back at our other sequencing charts that we've made where we gave you different options of how you could sequence your narrative or how you could sequence a retell. You can still use that same vocabulary, those same transitions when we talk about math. So we'll use a couple examples. I discovered that Mrs. Ryder needed blank dollars to buy her drink. First, right? Tell me what you did first. First, I looked at the coins and added their value. First, I added 25, 25, 1, 1, and 10 cents for the coins. Whatever you did first. What did you do first? Right? Then you could say, after that, right? I know you could say, first I did this, second, third, fourth, fifth. You could do that. You could, but let's be a little creative, right? Let's try some different ones. Look at our sequencing anchor chart and get some other ideas. Mix it up a little. First, I did some math stuff. What did you do? After that, this is a multi-step problem. You're not going to be finished in one step. There are a lot of things you have to do here. After that, a good transition you might want to try is once I knew, because first you have to figure out how much money Miss Ryder has, giving you that clue, right? First you did this, after that, all right, by now you know how much money Miss Ryder has. Once I knew, right, now that I know, once I knew how much money Miss Ryder had, you can do that. Then and you might go back to after that. The next step was, these are ideas you can use. The next step was, my final step was, remember, step is something you do like step 1, step 2, step 3. You're not walking through it, right? So what you're saying to your partner or what you write in the end might sound something like this. Now, remember, you can copy ideas from my anchor chart, but your response isn't going to make sense if you copy directly from here everything I wrote, because I didn't fill in all the blanks. So you can pick and choose. You can use some of mine. You can talk to a friend and get some language from them. You can get math ideas from them. These are some pointers to get you going. So I found that Mrs. Ryder needed blank to buy her drink. First, I did some math stuff. Don't write that. After that, I did some more math stuff. Don't write that either. Once I knew how much money Mrs. Ryder had, then what happened next? The next step was, and then in the end, my final step was blank, and I learned that, I'm going to put that here. That's how I discovered that Ms. Ryder needed 10 cents, whatever it might be. All right. Do you feel confident? You have your vocabulary, you have your frames to get your conversation and your writing started. Now we can move on to solving our problem. Now you can make beautiful, fancy anchor charts with all kinds of stencils and cutouts and stickers and pictures. If you have beginning English speakers in your class, you would have more visuals on here, more pictures. You might have pictures of the coins, pictures of the value, the names of the coins, right? I'm assuming a little bit higher level here. And remember, your supports have to match your students. So your support for this problem might look different from mine if you have beginning English speakers. We're going to bring it down to more simple language. I would then here consider doing first, next, then last if they don't have that part mastered yet, because they can use that in any content. I'm assuming a little higher. And I want to give them other options besides first, next, then, last, or step one, step two, step three, because while they're doing their math, I want to move up their language. If these were advanced English speakers, then I'd really be throwing in some transitions and like different sentence structures, like what is that most awesome response going to sound like? So think about how you're going to level your anchor chart. The other part of this that we're incorporating in the anchor chart is the idea of word sentence discourse. So 3 levels of language that you can introduce to students in every lesson that will help them develop. We start at the word level. What are the words we're going to use in here? What do they mean? This is our quick vocabulary development. Sentence level. How do we put that in sentences? How do we start talking about this? Here's your guidance for sentence. And then this becomes our guidance for discourse, right? We're going to start talking about this problem. We're going to start talking about money. We're going to talk about the steps. We're going to talk about right and wrong answers, how we got there, what's the best process, whose process was more efficient, wherever you go. This is the beginning of your discourse. They can take this and gain confidence, and then they can start talking about it using other language. So the anchor chart is really a lot more than just something to hang in the room and take up some of that blank wall space. Now students can refer to it all the time when they're doing problem solving, talking with a partner, or writing a response for you. I hope that you gain some new ideas for your anchor charts in this segment, and then you'll see how it plays out later in the paired conversation protocol strategy.